Oh, thank you.
Yeah, we're ready. Okay. Colleen's out tonight.
Thank you. Literally left it dry.
I'd like to call to order the North Brunswick Township Board of Education special meeting for the 2022-23 budget workshop. Can we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Brockman.
Here.
Mr. Duran Harris.
Here.
Miss James.
Here.
Miss Keefe. Mr. Liguori.
Here.
Dr. Patel.
Here.
Miss Toth.
Here.
Mr. Wen.
Here.
And Miss Zolik.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Hawk. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Law, the public notice of this meeting, which included the time, date, and location, was distributed by 3 p.m. on Wednesday, March 2nd, 2022 in the following manner. Posted on the bulletin board reserved for announcements in the board office, 25 Linwood Place, North Brunswick, mailed to the Home News Tribune, Sentinel, and Clerk of the Township of North Brunswick, and delivered to the 9 duly elected board members. And at this time, I'll pass it over to you, Ms. Shiroka, for the budget presentation.
Thank you, and we're going to step down here so we can do it, and the board members can stay up here. We'll present to you. Just have to set up our technology real quick. All right, good evening, board members, members of the audience, members of our viewing public on YouTube, and thanks for being here tonight. And we are very pleased to be able to present our budget to you this evening. I'd like to thank my cabinet for coming this evening, providing support, and also to present. We are here to present our preliminary budget. It will not be a final budget. Can you hear me okay? No. I need to hold the microphone? Okay. Yes, if you have it. For now, I'll stand with us. So again, we're here to present our preliminary budget this evening, and thank you. And I want to make sure everybody can hear us very clearly. So as we do with everything, we focus in on our mission and our core values to guide the work that we do. So obviously we start with the mission of North Brunswick Township School District in partnership with the community is to educate, inspire, and empower our students to meet challenges and achieve success. Our core values focus on the fact that all means all, and that we believe that all of our students deserve to have the opportunity to learn in a safe and secure environment. We believe in high expectations for professionalism, instruction, and student outcomes, and we believe all children are entitled to exceptional education based on their needs, characterized by a challenging and differentiated curriculum delivered by a highly qualified staff. And that's where this budget comes in. In order to meet that mission and our core beliefs, we must present a well-thought-out, detailed budget for your approval tonight. So, I'm multitasking with my hands here. I'm going to give you a little 101 on school budget basics, not going into it too deeply, but since we do have some new board members here tonight, and perhaps our viewing public is not as up to date on the intricacies of what makes a school budget, I thought we'd talk a little bit about, where does our school district get its money to operate? So first of all, our budget process begins in November. So not too long after the school year begins, we actually begin planning for the next year. We assume a flat budget because we don't know how much money we'll be getting from the state until usually February or early March of the following year, which is what happened this year. It came out in March. We have an interactive process which engages the schools, supervisors, principals, and determining our wish lists of needs for the next school year, thinking about class enrollment, what programs are we going to put in, what kind of staffing will we need, obviously what's the situation in the world, and obviously the pandemic certainly impacted our decision making on what we were going to put into this budget. So our main income sources start with the local tax levy, which is capped at 2%. That's our greatest income source. Then comes state aid, and that varies from year to year. And we have been doing better in the last few years, getting more state aid. And then it also includes federal and state grants and entitlements. Now, different states fund schools in various ways. In New Jersey, taxes, property taxes are what funds our school districts, as well as the state aid. Other districts don't get as much state aid as we do. It depends on the wealth of the district. But mostly, property taxes are what funds state schools in this state. So that becomes very difficult because people see their property taxes rising every year. And so before 2012, districts had to present their budgets to the public for a vote, a referendum every year to vote it up or down. And a lot of times that became very controversial because people were very sensitive about their pockets and would say, I'm not going to vote for this because I can't afford it in my income, in my property taxes. So in order to help alleviate that, at the time, I think it was Governor Christie imposed a 2% cap on raising taxes, on property taxes. But in exchange, districts could choose to not go out for a vote with the public for their budget. So North Brunswick chose that option back then. So no longer do we have to go out for a vote as long as we stay under that 2% cap. Now, school districts cannot bond money or increase taxes the same way that a township can. So we are limited to that 2% increase. And our federal grants may vary from year to year. Some of the federal grants that we see are the title districts, that title programs that you see, like we are a school-wide Title I district. So we get Title I funding for both NBTMS, our middle school, and for Linwood. We also get Title II-A, which is for professional learning, and Title III, which is for English language learners. Now, due to the pandemic, additional federal funding has been given to the district through the ARP and the ESSER funding. And those are very limited over the next two more years. And those grants will end, and so we have to plan programs that we also know will end and that we can either figure out how to finance in the local budget eventually or let that program expire. State grants also change from year to year. Our preschool grant is also a state funding grant, and that's the Preschool Expansion Aid, or PEA grant. So the school funding formula, or the SFRA, is made up of different parts. The state calculates exactly what a necessary funding level is to provide a thorough and efficient education for each district student. And so they figure out how much is adequate to educate a student. So that number right now is exactly $11,975, and that equals one student. That's the base number. So an elementary student is considered your base student, and it starts with that baseline of what it costs, because it costs least to educate an elementary student. And then they begin to add on percentages in addition to each grade level rise. So as you go into middle school, they count as 1.04, high school students count as 1.16 in the calculation, and VOTEC students are actually 1.26 because the necessary resource to provide for those students. So additional weights are added for each student. Free and reduced lunch numbers add extra weighting. These students are considered at risk or needing additional supports, therefore they get an additional weighting in how they're calculated. Another weighting, and so one thing is the free and reduced lunch number that we have in the district varies very much. And so before the pandemic, it was at 43%, but now that number is 27%. But that really doesn't accurately indicate the number of students who are at risk in our district anymore, because The state actually goes to an automatic certification for families that are on programs where they get food support. And not as many families, because of that, have been filling out the free and reduced lunch form. And because we are on full free lunch for everybody in the district right now, we have not been able to successfully get as many families filling out that form. So this is going to be a huge push for us over the next year, because in the next calculation, that's essential for us to make sure that we are really adequately representing the families that are at risk in free and reduced lunch, because it does impact our funding. So additional weighting is given to limited in English proficient students, LEP students, and as the cost to support their extra additional language learning is greater. And so if a student is both LEP and at risk, their weight is even greater. So the state looks at all this data that's submitted for our student population. We submit data every year through NJ Smart on all of our students, and those are the numbers that they use in calculating the number that should be that thorough and efficient base student number. So all that gets calculated to create a base per pupil amount for the district. So then, once that base per pupil amount, or the adequate amount to educate a student, is established for the district, then the state determines how it's paid for. And the state calculates how much each community individually must pay and how much the state would be responsible for. So the state takes into consideration the local property values and the income of the district residents. And these are calculated to make the local cost share. And so this is a complicated formula that they work out, the pages and pages, and how they've calculated all these pieces. But this is the first year that North Brunswick has not been paying more than their fair share. So for many, many years, and you've heard it previously mentioned in previous budget addresses, many years, North Brunswick was paying more than their fair share of taxes. They were paying a higher amount than they needed to. And so the state has added more and more money to the calculation. So finally, we've gotten to a point where we are at above the adequacy amount, and we're not paying greater than other districts might be. So that is very good news for us here in the district. Let's see what else. Additionally, go back to the next one. They provide equalization aid, which balances out those numbers. So the state will give extra equalization aid to make up the difference between the adequacy amount and how much the district is able to pay. And again, that changes year by year depending on property values, the values determined of the income of the residents, as well as if you have a year in particular where maybe a large number of students are going from middle school to high school, or leaving the district and going to VOTEC, or you have a large influx of students who are limited English proficient, then the state has to kind of readjust that, and they may provide an adjustment to that until the number can catch up. So there are other categories that were created that are listed here: the transportation aid, special education aid, extraordinary special education aid, and security. And the main one I'll talk about right now is really the special education aid, because that's also calculated not based on our actual number of special education students, because the state doesn't want you to overclassify students by making that number too large. They have assumed that 14.78% of every district student population is going to be classified, with an additional 1.272% needing speech therapy. So they actually have different calculations based on each of those different needs. And so we in the district have 13.5% special ed students, and we fall right into that perfect zone. And then that's how they calculate that. And then a lot of times during the year, you will have students come in and join the district, and they may come with an IEP, and they may have to go to an out-of-district placement, and that's a huge cost for the district that you can't necessarily plan for. And that's why they have the extraordinary special education aid that they make up for on the back end of the budget planning, giving back that money the next year for any extraordinary costs that the district may have had during the year. So it's a complicated formula, and it changes every year, and we look at it very closely when it comes in, but sometimes it's hard to make heads or tails of it, honestly, It's a lot, but we look at that basic number that we're getting from the state. And then we go back to this scales of balance. And this is something that we've looked at for years when we've presented to you here at the board, talking about the difference, the importance of us in our positions knowing that we have a big fiscal responsibility as well as educational integrity to provide for and giving you a budget. So we have to balance those two items. We know that number one is our educational mission to our students and to educate every one of them with educational integrity, to provide the best education for them, to provide all the resources we need to provide that education. And number two is to the taxpayers in North Brunswick. That's part of our fiscal responsibility, to make sure that we're doing it in a responsible way, not wastefully, not wasting money, and looking at it in the best way that we can for the district. Parents, when they're looking to purchase a home, they go online and they look at school districts and their value and what are they getting for the value. And so we feel that we are presenting a budget here tonight that provides that balance and provides a value for parents who are already in town and provide, having an education that will be strong for their students and support them throughout their career here, and also make it appealing to people who may come into the district. And part of the balance is also thinking about the pandemic and how it's impacted our education. So that's driven a lot of the educational items you will see in the fiscal year 23. So let's look at both of those sides of that balancing equation. So fiscal responsibility, obviously, energy conservation has been one that's been dealt with for years under Mr. Keener's office. We've worked very hard to make sure that we are responsible with energy conservation. We are careful. We joined ESIP projects. We have solar projects throughout the district, as you've heard. We do a lot in terms of cooperative purchasing. We're part of quite a few cooperative bid groups in the state of New Jersey that help us get the best cost for what we purchase. We do know that when retirement occurs, that we can consolidate and save money there. We try to partner with the best companies in terms of staff benefits, and we get contributions from our staff as well. That's part of the state law that they must contribute. That also helps with our fiscal responsibility. And we do provide a competitive benefit structure. We have a lot of enterprise programs with Chartwells, our pool rental now that we've added this year. Lobbying efforts have increased our state aid. That's part of our fiscal responsibility. The increased ratables from the town has helped our fiscal responsibility. And then we've been very careful about appropriating our reserves, making sure that we save money. Over the last few years, we've done a very good job of saving money and carefully holding on to it as best we can and using it when the time is right. We've gotten increased grant funding, and we've used that cautiously. We haven't jumped into things that were inappropriate. We've used those where they were needed for our students. We do residency checks to make sure that we're honoring the taxpayer for people who are not actually living in our town. And some people may feel that that's not necessarily the fair thing to do if somebody can't afford to live in town or has moved. But it really is important to the taxpayer to know that if somebody is here and trying to get the education because of the way the property taxes pay for our education, it is our responsibility to make sure that people who live in town are the ones using our services. We do have shared services with the township, and that is also very helpful in terms of our fiscal responsibility and making sure that we budget our money accordingly. So on the other end, we have a lot of budget priorities that are challenges to us where we balance out that scale. One of the biggest ones that you are probably used to hearing and heard here every year is that charter school costs are a large expense and a challenge for us. They go up every year. Talk about that a little bit more later. Obviously, a big impact in our budget planning and our priorities this year is our response to COVID-19. Not only learning loss, mental health, the social, emotional, the achievement gaps that were caused through pandemic are great, and we've talked about that before here at this location. And that's incumbent on us to make sure that we're putting our efforts and our budget money toward those kinds of learning recovery pieces. It's also a challenging world, so we have to continue to make sure that we're maintaining our security and our safety, because there are those dangers out there in the world. It's incumbent on us to make sure that we are doing that, and that includes cybersecurity. We are working continually to close that achievement gap, which has been enlarged, and deal with inflation costs that are out there. And that's part of our safe and providing safe transportation routes. It's also dealing with, and we know that the cost of bus drivers for wages, as well as the gas costs, go up. Part of our other challenges include maintaining and improving our facilities. We have 7 buildings that we have to make sure are safe and secure for our students and are in the best shape, and that includes air conditioning, heating, water, power, all of the above. We have technology plans that have to be maintained, as well as professional development plans and curriculum plans. And then we are in the midst of beginning our new strategic plan, so that will also be wrapped up into our budget as we move forward in the next few years. And we are also in a time where employees have a little bit more choice about where they're working, and people are going out and shopping for places to work. And we want to make sure that we are providing a competitive, good place for people to work within the state of New Jersey. So that's an important piece of our budget priority as well. Okay. So in the 2022-23 proposed budget, you will see there's a general fund with $129,899,000. That's the general expense plus capital plus charter school costs. Then you will see grants and entitlements, that's those state sources and federal sources I mentioned. That's $8 million plus. And then the debt service fund is $9,262,935. So those are the 3 pieces that are going to be in this budget that's presented tonight. So the operating budget that I showed first, the $129,400,899. How does that break down? So the biggest piece of it, and it's hard to see the pie chart because we couldn't make it big enough, but the big blue piece is salaries and benefits. So obviously we are a talent-heavy business. We employ nearly 1,000 staff members. We are a large employer, and that entails making sure that they're trained and making sure that we're providing salaries, their benefits, their pension costs, all those pieces go into that large piece of the pie. That's about 75% of our budget. The rest of our budget is made up of, again we mentioned earlier, charter school costs, capital acquisitions, facility operations, transportation, technology, you can't see because it's too thin in the pie chart, and special education costs. But talent, our teachers, by very nature, are the core of our work with students, right? And it's in our staff, all of our staff who support that. So Ms. Rumbo will speak more to that in her presentation, specifically on personnel and our personnel planning, because that is a big part of this budget. Here's the grand total: $146,806,544. I think I got it right this time. This is the budget that will be presented to you for approval tonight. And we will dig into personnel, we will dig into some facilities and maintenance, pieces of curriculum, and then we'll show you a few more specifics before we present it to you for a vote. Ms. Rumbo? Yeah, I'm sorry. It's written right there.
That's okay, I'm not used to it either, to be honest. Thank you, Mr. Roca. So a great intro in terms of, I'm 75% pretty much of the piece of the pie. I don't know if you know how I feel about that. I'm excited to present to you tonight the proposed personnel request. And as Mrs. Shiroka said, obviously we are a huge employer. Obviously the core of our district is instruction, is curriculum, and our teachers and administrators that are able to provide that to our students. So what I wanted to go over first is very similar to how Mrs. Shiroka went into the basic planning of a school budget. I really wanted to talk first about where our personnel needs come from and the different buckets, especially, you know, coming into another year, still, you know, trying to address those needs from the pandemic. But again, closing those achievement gaps. And as the former Director of Accountability and Special Programs here at Central Office for 8 years in the district, you know, I worked very closely with state accountability for local and state testing. And again, that's one of the things we once again focused on with our proposed personnel for this year, closing achievement gaps, providing increased and continued intervention, but also enrichment opportunities and supports for our students as well. Addressing the social emotional needs of our students, again, continuing to rebound from this pandemic. You know, although a lot of the COVID mandates have been lifted, we are seeing those after effects with our students and our staff, as well as our parents and guardians. So it's really important for us to address those needs in any way that we can. We are seeing an increase in student population. What that means is, Mrs. Shiroka already talked about our preschool. We are still gaining towards meeting our preschool universe, providing free full-day pre-K for all eligible students in the district. And again, luckily, we do have the preschool expansion aid state grant that will help us meet the needs and increase our teaching staff. Meeting the academic and social needs of our growing subgroups and compliance. Mrs. Shiroka also talked about our increased needs in our special education population, our English second language learner population. There are certain state compliances that come with it, whether it's curriculum, whether it's IEP needs, and we need to meet those goals and those needs of those students in order to meet state compliance. And yes, we do have to then increase personnel as those student populations increase. Very important, keeping students in district. We do look at, every year, providing more opportunities for our students, whether it's acceleration, success in the classroom, also outside the classroom. We'll also be looking at some proposed stipended positions, such as increasing clubs and sport opportunities for our students as well. Providing comprehensive specialized programs, like I mentioned. You know, we're looking at increasing, you know, STEM academies, the different business academies at the high school, and also going down to the middle school. So those are things that we are looking at as well. Again, in my former role, unfunded state mandates, I was used to that. That is now Mrs. Chang's position. 8-9 years ago, when, remember that acronym PARC, speaking of unfunded state mandates, here is a computerized state test you must take. Find the computers to take them at your district's cost. So I'm no stranger to trying to work out a budget where state curriculum learning standards shift, change all the time, but guess what doesn't change? What's already in the curriculum and standards. So there's always, we're really seeing now more than ever an increase in the standards, but there's no change in content, so it's added on, added on, added on. So we do have to look at, increasing staff to meet those other standards and needs. If they're not going to take away, we're obviously gonna have to add as well. Big piece is utilizing federal and state grant funds to help meet all those personnel goals. And as Mrs. Shiroka stated, we started planning for this in November. And in terms of personnel, I work with the principals, supervisors, directors. Of course, those that know me, I have a very detailed Google form, a request form, that they fill out, and it's not just about what personnel needs or wish list do you want, it's why. I need to know, because I need to be able to explain to my superintendent, my business administrator, the Board of Education, the district, the public, the taxpayer, why these positions are so needed. Why do we need them right now? So we go through a long process. It does take months. One of the things that I do in my role as assistant superintendent is I look at the rationales that the principals, the supervisors provide. And I start to go through, okay, you know, where can we meet this? Maybe there's some state, federal grants or state grants that can help us meet some of those needs, and kind of start to look at where the curriculum is. I start talking to the directors. I start, you know, going to the principals, back to them saying, well, kind of what are your priorities, and tell me why. And then we meet as a cabinet, and we start to go through, you know, what positions really can we put in the budget for this year, and what things maybe, because of the way that the state works, what things maybe can go off another year or two down the road. So those are the things that we look at. And here they are. Our proposed full-time personnel. I have highlighted and put a little asterisk next to. It's important to see we are proposing 8 of these positions up there are either fully or 50% or more grant funded. So that is no impact to the local budget or not significant impact to the local budget. Again, we are trying to meet the preschool universe. We are looking at proposing a full-time, another full-time special areas teacher. We had one this year. We have one this year that helps, goes into the classrooms, music, arts, bringing that to our preschool. That would be 100% grant funded as well. Again, as we meet the need to meet increased universe for our preschool students, we need more teachers. So we are proposing to put in 2 additional classrooms with 2 integrated preschool teachers, 2 8 instructional aides, and the 2 teachers would be each 75% PEA grant funded. As I mentioned, as part of our needs, we are still rebounding from the pandemic. And we've looked at our ESSER funds. I worked with Mercy on this as well to look at how we can fund 2 elementary school counselors, split between the 4 elementary schools. And they will be 100% grant funded, and we will look at the data as they get into the schools next year to really see, is this the type of position that we can sustain after the ESSER grant funding goes away. But we really feel it's important to get more counselors at our elementary schools. Math academic support teachers, our state testing data still shows, the pandemic gaps still show a decrease in math and the math standards. So we are looking to add 2 more additional math academic support teachers. Currently, we have 5 literacy academic support teachers in each elementary. Adding 2, that would split between 2 buildings, would increase to about 3.54 per school. Gifted and talent coordinators, here is state mandate. We need to be infusing gifted and talented programs within our elementary schools. Is it still on? Okay. I do have an 8th grade teacher voice still if I need it. So we are proposing to add 2 gifted and talented coordinators to split between the 4 elementary schools, again, to meet that state standard as well. Linwood got a big piece of the pie last year when we split 678 into a 5-6 building and a 7-8. So Linwood was very gracious with their request. This is a state standard. Computer science is increasing in state standards, so they are asking for a computer science teacher. The middle school, it's like home. Title I, that I managed for 8 years here. Again, addressing those achievement gaps. We do have the Title I funding to support another math and another ELA teacher at the middle school to do intervention and enrichment, and that would be Title I funded. More state mandates. Civics is mandated into the social studies curriculum for the middle school level. Again, full year courses, we don't have enough teachers to meet that mandate, so they have asked for those 2 teachers. The high school, we are looking at proposing an instructional dean. Right now there are 3, 4, an extra one would make 1 per grade level, which is what we see 5, 6, 7, 8. They each have an instructional dean. So that definitely would help out at the high school. Bringing back in-school suspension. Research data shows the option for suspension right now at the high school is out of school suspension. Keeping the kids in is really where they need to be. So this would definitely help there. We also discussed restorative justice practices at the high school. Bringing back an in-school suspension program would really help them do that. The high school has a lot of academic intervention sections now. STAR, AVID programs, so they have asked for an academic intervention counselor. Sorry, my allergies are bothering me. Social studies department, I'm glad we have Ms. Passner here. The social studies department, back in 2010 when we had RIFs, they have not built that position back in 12 years. That was my reaction too, Mr. Ligori. So they have a lot of different sections in terms of also electives in the social studies department. And yes, thank you, I'll take my water. So, you know, we felt the need that really they could use this extra teacher as well, especially since they haven't had it in 12 years. Special services, our Director of Pupil Personnel Service is here, Mr. Harry. We worked closely with him. The preschool is asking for, they need actually to meet by state code and special service mandates, a learning disabilities teacher consultant. That would be 100% funded by IDEA grant, the special ed grant. Multiply disabled teachers, 2, 1 in elementary, 1 in high school, and the aides that would accompany that. And then we also needed to build back in a special ed teacher for English at the high school. Any questions on that right now? Take a sip of water. It is a lot of personnel, but it's much needed personnel. As I mentioned, we have some proposed stipended positions. Our athletic program at the middle school is growing by leaps and bounds, we're proud to say. And volleyball at the high school has been such a great addition over the years. The middle school, we are proposing to add a girls volleyball and a boys volleyball coach to the middle school. Great feeder program. High school, we are looking at the addition of 5 new clubs. Really, again, to keep that enrichment opportunities for our students, varied opportunities for our students. Also, we will be we're asking to add an assistant varsity girls lacrosse coach and an assistant boys basketball coach. That's part of a 5-year plan that's been going on. We've been adding an assistant varsity coach each year. And then last, a stipended position for an assistant athletic trainer. We do have 1 athletic trainer. She's based at the high school. So adding an assistant for a stipended position to also help out at the middle school is what we've asked for. I don't have any other personnel to add. But again, you know, I think we're very true to our process. You know, and as a longtime employee of this district, 21 years as a former student, you know, I really have appreciated this position, my former position, to really understand what goes into personnel. I'm a former teacher here, you know, and I hope the board, the district, the taxpayers can see the thought process we put into this. Thank you. Back to my old hat, put my old hat back on again, just to keep things moving. This curriculum, instruction, and technology, just go through these slides fairly quickly, but in terms of curriculum, you know, obviously, we obviously have to support continued purchase of textbooks and consumables. So many of those are digital, many are still traditional, so we still have those costs. We are in the 2nd year next year of our Envisions K-4 math rollout, so we were able to work with the company last year. Instead of taking the full budget we had last year, we split it into 2 payments, so we still have to pay the 2nd payment of that next year. There are quite a few standards that are coming due in September of 2020 that we have to have updated curriculum for, so there will be a great deal of curriculum writing going on, but a lot of that will also be grant paid. Like you see those little stars again, those are all grant funded positions, or grant paid work that will go on. We have upped our resources for our English language learners and our continued expansion at Livingston Park and Parsons, the dual language program. We really felt, and with feedback from the teachers, found that they weren't getting it, they didn't have enough resources to do the work that they're doing. So that program had started off at kindergarten at both schools, and now next year we'll be finally rolling up to 4th grade. And as they get up in the grades, they need more and more resources in both English and Spanish, and we want to make sure that we're providing for them. We are planning to offer a new high school course, multiple high school courses, but one I'm excited about more so than any is the geometry and construction course. So as long as we can find a shop teacher, and if you know anybody who's really good at woods, and we can get them certified if they have a college degree, we can help them get certified if they'd like to teach woods. But that would be in combination with a math teacher, and the students in that class would work and learn their geometry skills by actually building things, and eventually can build bigger and bigger things. And it's a great way to learn your math
hands-on, practical. So that's one of the expansion of courses. Looking to continually expand our AVID program, which we brought into MBTMS, but that will continue. Obviously, technology remains the core of our work these days. We all need devices, everybody in every department. We need to make sure they're updated. We need to make sure we refresh the older ones, get the ones out that are not going to be, cannot be brought up to software specs anymore, because that happens. They get to the point where they can no longer be upgraded to the latest software. We have to make sure our secretaries, our maintenance department, all of those different departments get refreshed laptops on a cycle. So one of the things we put in this year is we've started last year with a cycle of going through the different departments. So 1 year, all the secretaries will get new laptops. And then the next year, people in the maintenance departments and so on. So running through a cycle so it's not a big hit all at once. We're doing the same thing with our Promethean smart boards, so that right now, the smart boards that are old and starting to fall apart, that we're Frankensteining together, that we're gradually beginning to roll those out. We started with 9 per most schools, I think 12 at the high school last year, and then next year we'll continue that. So until we get them all upgraded, we also have to make sure we're doing technology upgrades on the infrastructure. Those continue, as well as I mentioned earlier, the cybersecurity. Our insurance company has, we've been on the cutting edge of having a cybersecurity policy, but our insurance company has required us to up our game, which makes sense given the environment these days and the challenges in terms of cybersecurity. So we have begun our steps in that already, and we will be continuing that in next year's budget. Additionally, professional learning, with all that talent we have to keep them trained and updated on the standards. Some of the things we'll be focusing on next year are, we started this year, the New Jersey Tiered Systems of Support. We've been doing that with our admins this year. That will be rolling out to the teachers next year. We'll be doing continued science and math professional learning, continuing with our car math pilot. We have a dual language consultant who's really helping us to make sure that we are implementing best practices in those dual language classes. And looking at really supporting inclusion training for our special needs students. There was a recent report that came out from the state that says just overall there needs to be continued improvement throughout the state in inclusion training for special education students. So that's one of the things we will be focusing on with grant funding next year. We've got all new physical education and health standards. We have ongoing behavioral support we need to train our teachers for. They need to learn about technology. And again, we continue in phonemic awareness training because we know the basics of reading are so essential. Right. Next up, Mrs. Hawk.
Thank you, everyone. So we're going to continue on with the presentation here. Let's see. Oops, wrong way. There we go. So we're going to talk to you about transportation, a very important part of maintaining our school system is obviously getting our children to school every day safely, and we have faced many challenges this school year, as Mr. Roca and Ms. Rombo have probably already mentioned to you. As you know, we are a two-tiered transportation system, so we transport kids first, pre-K through K, second part of the morning and the first part of the morning at the high school, and the older kids come. Well, we've been having some challenges, obviously, nationally speaking, about obtaining drivers for these buses. So it's been a challenge, and because of that, guess what? Supply and demand. The price, the cost of transporting children has increased substantially. So we do see an increase of about 13% in the budget. We've absorbed it this year. We were very fortunate. We had many, many packages, as you can see there, routes that we renewed at CPI of 1.91%. So that was a win for us. There were other routes that we were not able to renew. The vendors decided to not renew at the current rate, and we had to put them out for bid. We actually had the bid opening this morning. Mr. Kuhner and I were at that bid opening. We were analyzing the results of those bids, and prices just keep going up. So we will face financial challenges in the transportation budget. We just want you to all be aware of that. The price of gas keeps going up. We can't find drivers. So again, challenges in the transportation line, but we've been able to manage. We bring our children to school every day safely, and we return them safely. So keep an eye on our transportation going on in future meetings. A challenge that Mr. Roca mentioned as well was charter school. We must transport our students to the charter school. As you can see, our budget is going to contain over $600,000 just to transport those children to those other schools. Maintenance. I'm not going to read everything. Well, of course, we must maintain our buildings safely. They need to be healthy and obviously presentable to the district. We want people to be driving around through our community and feeling pride in the buildings that we have here. The middle school, one of the big pride and joys of our community, and Mount Linwood, and every school should have the same aspect. So here are all of the things that we're going to continue. The word is continue to purposely look at every building, look at all of our systems, and maintain our properties. Lines, painting, pavement, very important things. Again, safety. Well, so here are some of our big projects that we were talking about. Over the last couple of years, we've been focusing on doing our roofing projects. Now we are going to, very concertedly and with the assistance of our ESIP vendor, and as well as our architect of record, we have been analyzing all of our mechanicals in the buildings. As you know, most of our mechanicals are now 20 years old or so. It's time to start replacing them. We're starting to notice that there has been more and more repairs. So we need to make a concerted effort to start to strategically replace the HVAC units throughout the district. We've allocated $2 million in the budget. It's being paid for by the savings over the years. We've been able to reserve money, and therefore that's where it's going to come from. You are all aware that we already started this project and it's being funded by ESSER funds. We're putting in new HVAC systems in all the elementary gymnasiums with grants, not affecting the budget. So again, with being fiscally responsible over the last couple of years, we've been able to do that project, which is well over $1 million, and we're allocating $2 million from our reserves to start working on, again, strategically putting in a plan to start to cycle in or cycle out the old HVAC units and put new ones in. The final phase of our roofing, there are 2 small sections here in this building that have not yet been replaced. Again, through capital reserve, we're able to do that. And then all the roofs will have been replaced over the last couple of years. As we said, in order to maintain the safety of our operations, we need to keep replacing our equipment. You can see there as well that we are replacing, as we did last year, cycling out some of our old trucks, our vans. There's also a bus that's built into here as well, and some of the equipment that is necessary in order to clean or mow the lawns and all that equipment. And again, because we have been fiscally responsible, we're able to take it out of our reserves. The last items that we're looking at is, again, our buildings. Some of our buildings are 50 years old. We have furniture in some of our buildings as well that have been there for many, many years. It's time to upgrade and maintain what we have now, and that's the other $371,000. Again, we've been very fortunate out of the reserve.
Very much. All right, so let's look at our additional revenues. You've heard of all the different things, and so specifically, what are we doing with those additional revenues? We have the tax levy increase, 1.7 million. The state aid increase is 6.2, which gives us a total increase of money to spend, 7.9 million. The big, as we said before, one of our big challenges is the increase in charter school costs. In 18-19, you can see we had 323 students going out of district at a cost of $3.5 million. Now, that's the money that the state tells us we're supposed to be paying to the charter schools, but that doesn't include, in the red, we add up the extra transportation cost. That's the part added into that red part. So it was really $3.7 million. In 19-20, it went up to $4.6 million with 382 students. 21-22 this year was 472 students with 6.8 million total. And next year, it will be 516 students is estimated at $8.3 million. So again, that's a big hit for our local budget, because again, we still have 7 buildings to maintain. No, we don't have those students to educate right now, but we still have all the underlying costs that we're required to keep going. But that's a whole school of students. And we do want to get those student backs, and we don't begrudge any family that chooses a charter school, but we do see it as a duplication of efforts, and we wish the state would choose to fund it in a different way. That's basically our message. One of the charter schools has schools outside of districts, so that outside of the county. So then the cost to transport those students is even greater. And it gets harder and harder to get bus companies that want to do runs to that school out of the county as well. So those 7.9 million additional revenues that we are talking about are going to these different areas. New positions, as we talked about, the talent, the treasure we value here. Our ESY, our extended school year, that money goes to pay for our extended school year programs. Substitutes and other things. The leases we get to purchase textbooks. Miscellaneous increases, our costs in technology, the charter costs, transportation, furniture. That's where those additional revenues are going. So what does that mean for you as a resident of North Brunswick? This is a tax levy impact. We will be proposing a full 2% increase, which is about approximately. It's not exactly an equal mark, right, Rosa?
Yeah.
It's sort of close to 6 cents per $100 of assessed property value. So on average, for a resident of North Brunswick, that's $8.44 per month on an average assessed home. So we want to remind people that last year there was a 0% tax increase, and that was very important for the board, for us to recognize that families, were struggling through the pandemic. So there was no increase last year at all. But in order to maintain salary increases and all the things that we need to do, we are proposing a full 2% tax levy impact. So again, that goes back to our budgetary balance of fiscal responsibility and educational integrity. And we do believe that we provide a value for the money invested by providing a strong school system where the infrastructure, the employees are strong and well maintained, and provided for thoughtfully, that we are balancing out and not going crazy with all sorts of unnecessary items. We're not adding in lots of layers of administration. We are putting our dollars into the classroom, into areas where we're seeing student need, and we feel will be the most impactful for our students in this community. A strong school system attracts more families. It builds home values for when you sell your home. So regardless, we feel we are providing a value to our community. So a few things to just remember. This is a preliminary budget that's getting passed. It may have changes, again, as we just got our transportation bids, and things may change. It's subject to county and Department of Education review. We may get retirements, which also impacts things. Our benefit rates may change. The grants that come from the federal government, the state, could also change. Our enrollment, charter school could come in as high, or it may change. But they do have a cap, at least in terms of how many students they're allowed to, because they have to propose their enrollment to the state. So that's already been determined, but sometimes we can get some of those kids back, and then their enrollment might not be as high. And then final contract settlements, as well as those transportation bids, may impact what the final budget is that this board approves in a few months. Some other pieces of good news, again, we are getting full funding for the preschool grant, which has allowed us to provide full-day preschool for about 60% of our preschool universe. We are in the middle of the lottery right now, so families can still apply to get into 3 or 4 if they have 3 or 4-year-olds. We're finalizing our solar projects, our roofing projects, and again, as Mrs. Hawks said, we are continuing to fund capital projects through well-saved capital maintenance reserve. We're prepaying some of our leases this fiscal year, and we are using our ESSER funds in a fiscally responsible way. Our main focus for those funds is intervention programs, things such as the UBHC clinicians, additional support of our extended school year programs, social emotional support for our students, technology devices, Chromebooks, and so on. So that sort of wraps us up to this statement. As I talk about our investment in knowledge pays the best interest, is what Benjamin Franklin said, and I think that is very true when you think about investing in an education, because our investment in the knowledge of our students really will pay dividends along the road as we develop our students. So this is the total number that the board will be voting on tonight for the draft proposed budget. You can see it on your agenda, board members, on the back of the first page in more detail. So if anyone has any questions, that's it for the basic presentation. And we gave you a lot of information, but we tried to also be as concise and clear as well about it. Any questions, board members?
Yeah, one quick question. The money that you have allocated for the charter schools, that $7 million, how does that line up with the state guidance? Is that at the state guidance number, lower, higher?
So it's allocated. They tell us how much we have to allocate, and we have to make sure we have that total amount. We don't necessarily put it all in that account. We don't put all our eggs in that basket, because we've done this over the last few years,
Yeah.
and we know we have the full amount accounted for. We put a certain amount towards the charter schools that we plan for in the operating budget, but then the rest of it, we have in another account. So if the number isn't what they say it is, then we don't lose that money. But if we put it all in that account, as you were correct, then we don't get that money back. But if we hold it off in another account, then and it doesn't come to fruition, then we keep that money.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, no other questions?
I mean, I have one question for the HVAC. It said $2,000, but I think Rosa mentioned it was $2 million for the HVAC projects. Is it 2,000 or 2
million.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, I figured that's what you meant. Okay.
No, it's.
I wish.
Okay.
I'm so sorry if I said that.
No.
Can I just ask one question?
Absolutely.
There's the one glaring thing to me was that our free and reduced percent is severely understated. We know it's not 27%. Is there some kind of a concerted effort that's going to be happening over the next couple of years as this federal money goes away to make sure, get out the vote kind of a thing almost, where we have to really engage with the community to make sure that those numbers go back to where they need to be?
We will definitely have a concerted effort. We've always had it, even pre-pandemic, that we always strongly recommend, suggest, work with the principals to ensure that parents do complete those free and reduced lunch forms. It benefits them, their children get to have a hot meal, a nice meal, a healthy meal. Even before COVID, we were doing that. During COVID, we were also saying, please fill out the form, because as a result of the COVID monies through ESSER at the federal level, there were additional benefits that these families could tap if they had their free and reduced lunch form. So we have been sending out messages throughout the school year to continue to do that. But as you know, right now, every meal is free. And so the incentive to fill out that form isn't as much there. Those families that are directly certified, meaning they already receive assistance from the the government, we get that information, it comes into our school system, it resides in our databases. It's those families that need to actually complete out a form, that they don't automatically qualify. Those are the ones we're going to tap into, and we've actually started to work with our registration department to find ways to get to those parents, get out the forms in a language that perhaps they can understand, not just the English form, but also the Spanish form. And come spring break, we're going to have a big push to send out Kinvolves, work with the principals again to get the message out so that we start now and not in September when everyone comes back and it's presumed that the free meals for all will end the last day of school. So everyone will need to start to pay again, those that can, and those that qualify should be putting in their form so that their children can have access to both our breakfast and our lunch.
Thank you. Hey, while you have the microphone, can I ask one additional question,
Sure, of
Mr.
course.
President?
Sure, absolutely.
You mentioned something about prepayment of leases in next year's budget. Can you expand on that a little bit? And
Yeah,
what the
so-
fiscal benefit is to the district of doing that?
So right now, we have savings in some of our lines, our budget lines, because of leaves of absences and breakage. You know, people retired and rehired at a lower rate. And so what it does is, instead of waiting to put the spending in this year for for our 22-23 budget, we have the money this year.
Oh, you're
It allows us to spend, it allows us to spend that money on something, hopefully, obviously, all the programs that Mr. Roca and Ms. Kita have mentioned, instead of saving that money to pay for a lease. We have it this year.
Thank you.
And we did this last year as well.
I missed that it was fiscal '22, so we're actually pulling next year's payments into this year that's
Correct.
ending June. Okay, thank
Correct.
you. Makes sense.
Correct. Yep.
Okay, any other questions? Quick questions?
I have a question. Hi, Janet.
It's coming from over here.
It's my mic.
Dr. Duff.
Hi. So when Amy was talking about the teachers that are being funded from the grants, how long is that process? And then after that ends, does that mean that it gets incorporated into the regular school budget?
Depends on the grant, too.
I was just gonna say, it also depends on the grant. So especially with ESSER, we know that ESSER funds are going to end. At least they say they are, you never know again. However, that is why, even the ones that we are currently funding through ESSER, we've already projected and built in to continue those programs into the local budget moving forward when ESSER funds get pulled back. The two new positions for those elementary counselors in particular are the ones that we're going to really spend this year focused on. For us right now, it's a pandemic need, a rebound need. However, we may find through, our research if the budget passes and we implement those positions, that they're a really great value added even beyond the pandemic. And then we would look to build those into the local budget. Luckily, in all my years, Title I money, has expanded. We don't see a need, we don't predict an adjustment to the Title I. That should be fine. Same thing with the state preschool expansion aid grant, and the special education IDA funding continues. So we feel very confident that those positions will be able to continue to be grant funded down the line as well. Great question. Thanks, Dr. Patel.
Anyone else? You ready for your quiz on SFRA? We can use a doodle poll if you like. All right, so again, I'd like to thank our team. This was, a very large effort on behalf of this entire team, our principals, our staff, to put together this budget. It's this team's first go-round together, and I have to tell you, it's a great team. It's very collaborative, and we've gone back and forth. We've argued back and forth on priorities and what should happen and where should. That's a no. It's a hard no right now, President. And then I pull her back a little bit, and we go back and forth. And, we've had a really good dynamic process, and so we're really proud of this budget we're presenting to you tonight. And thank you for consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Yeah, and I'd just like to say, too, if there's no other comments, on behalf of the board, we'd just like to thank everybody for all the time and effort and hard work you've put into the presentation and for managing the budget. You know, we know it's not an easy task, but we're confident that you'll continue to help move the district in the right direction and that we'll be successful. So thank you. At this time, we'd like to open up the public session for anything related to the 2022-2023 budget. If you'd like to ask a question or have any comments, we ask that you come up to the podium, sign in, and state your name. Seeing that there are none, may I please have a motion to close the public portion of the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any discussion? The public session is closed.
Thank you. Mr. Brockman, could you please take item number 7?
Yes, I make a motion to adopt the following tentative budget for the 2022-2023 school year. You want me to read the whole thing? No? As stated on pages 2 and 3 of the agenda.
Second.
Mr. Brockman,
Yes.
Mr. Duran Harris.
Yes.
Ms. James,
Yes.
Mr. Legori,
Yes.
Dr. Patel,
Yes.
Ms. Toth,
Yes.
Mr. Wen,
Yes.
Ms. Zolik.
Yes.
The budget has been accepted. The preliminary budget has been accepted.
Thank you. At this time, we'd like to open up to public session on any matter. So again, this is any matter, budget or non-budget related. We just ask again that if you want to make a comment or address the board, that you come to the podium, sign in, and state your name. Seeing that there are none, may I please have a motion to close the public portion of the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? This public session is closed.
Thank you. And finally, may I please have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? We're adjourned.
Thank you, everybody. I did.